Smiles are armor, and behind each one there is an untold story. A pain that has not yet healed. A cry that has never been heard. People don't wear masks out of malice. They wear them out of fear. Fear of being seen for who they really are. Fear that, if they reveal themselves, no one will stay. That's why they smile so much. They compliment. They agree. They make jokes. But deep down, they live on an emotional stage. A theater where the script is always the same. Show only what is safe. The rest they bury. They repress. They hide even from themselves. Carl Jung called this the persona, the face we offer to the world, carefully constructed to fit the mold of acceptance. But behind the persona dwells what he called the shadow, a psychic territory inhabited by everything we reject in ourselves: anger, envy, insecurity, neediness, arrogance. Not because they are monsters, but because one day someone made us believe they were unacceptable. And so, we began to live half a life. But the shadow does not disappear. It leaks out. When we are tired, when no one is looking, when power arrives, when pain touches an old wound. It is in these moments that the true essence escapes through the cracks in the character. And if you learn to observe carefully, you will never again be fooled by trained smiles. Because the truth always reveals itself in small gestures, in the tone of voice with the waiter, in the way someone treats those who cannot fight back, in the subtle change of posture after a promotion. The man who needs to humiliate others to feel great is just trying to crush the memory of when he was ignored. The woman who lives competing with others has not yet healed the child who learned that love was a contest. The friend who only shows up in your good times is showing you that your pain does not interest them. This is not about them. It is about awareness. About seeing that all behavior is a reflection of what has not yet been integrated. And the most unsettling thing, this also applies to you. Because the real work is not to identify the masks of others. It's recognizing your own. It's asking yourself why you speak kindly to those with status, but are harsh to those who can't benefit you. Why you remain silent in the face of disrespect, but explode at those who love you. Why you demand truth from others, but continue to lie to yourself. This doesn't make you a villain. It makes you human. But you can only heal what you face. As long as you don't look at your shadow, you will continue to attract relationships that project it. You will continue to be tested by the same situations. You will continue to feel used, ignored, inadequate. Not because the world is cruel, but because your soul is asking for transformation. And the universe, which does not send comfort, sends mirrors. Nothing changes until you change. And nothing is more liberating than abandoning the effort to appear to be someone, to finally be someone. Not perfect, but whole. Not controlled, but conscious. One who has faced their own darkness and therefore is no longer lost in that of others. If this beginning has already moved you, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave your support of any amount. It keeps this mission alive. And write in the comments, "Integrated shadow," to show that you are not here to pretend to be light. You are here to walk through the darkness with courage. Do you really want to get to know someone? You don't have to wait years or crises or drunken confessions at the foot of the bed. Just offer that person a dose, even a minimal one, of power, a position, a compliment, a stage, a slightly fatter bank balance, a growing number of followers, and then watch. That's exactly where the transformation happens, because power doesn't invent anything, it just reveals. Carl Jung said that the persona is the mask we wear in public. But this mask, however convincing it may be, falls apart when the ego feels empowered to no longer need it. Before power, the need to please is an almost instinctive impulse. After power, the desire to dominate arises. And it is not a sudden transformation. It is like a silent crack in the foundation of being. The tone changes. The response is delayed. Empathy is absent. Silence becomes tactical. Indifference becomes habitual. It is in this mismatch between what was said before and what is done now that the truth lies. Neuroscientists have confirmed what Jung intuited almost a century ago. Power diminishes the activity of mirror neurons, which are responsible for empathy. Those who rise often stop feeling. They cease to perceive others as human beings and begin to see them as resources. The waiter becomes a function. The partner becomes an obstacle. The friend becomes an audience. Love becomes a transaction. And all of this can happen before our eyes in silence while we wonder why they have changed so much. But they haven't changed. They have simply removed their disguise. Because power does not corrupt. It exposes the corruption that already existed, carefully camouflaged under trained smiles and rehearsed compliments. And this leads us to a brutal realization. A person's true character is not revealed in pain, but in privilege. When someone no longer needs to pretend to be accepted, that's when you finally see who they really are. Notice the signs. That person who used their voice to encourage others now uses it to intimidate. The one who listened patiently now interrupts impatiently. The one who walked beside you now floats above you. And worst of all, they make you feel like you should be grateful they're still around. This is the most dangerous paradox of power. It activates the shadow that the ego has spent years trying to tame, that part of the psyche that wants to be admired, obeyed, feared, the part that never healed the humiliation of childhood, that still holds a grudge from the time when it was ignored, invisible, rejected. And so that this never happens again, it anticipates, it controls, it dominates, it ridicules, it takes revenge. That is when the leader becomes a tyrant, the friend becomes an executioner, the partner becomes the tormentor. And all of this is justified by a veneer of superiority. Success becomes an excuse, status becomes a shield, and empathy becomes weakness. And you, who were once the foundation, now become a stepping stone. Respect evaporates, reciprocity disappears. Only the pedestal remains. And there lies the key. If someone forgets who was with them before they rose to power, it is because they never saw you as a presence, but as a function. And a function, unlike a soul, is disposable. So when someone forgets you at the top, don't feel small. Feel free. You haven't lost someone. You've just gotten rid of the illusion that person pretended to be. If kindness disappears when power arrives, it was never kindness. It was marketing. It was calculation. It was a strategy to achieve something greater. And now that something greater has been achieved, the disguise is no longer necessary. So, the next time you want to know who is really by your side, don't wait for crises. Observe success. It is the greatest mask detector there is. And when they fall, don't try to put them back on. Just watch and learn. You didn't lose a friend. You just saw their mask fall. They got promoted and suddenly stopped responding to your messages. They started mocking your ideas in meetings. They corrected you in public not to help, but to feel superior. That's not change, that's revelation. Power doesn't transform, it activates. Carl Jung knew that. He warned that man is not what he thinks he is. He is what he tries to hide. It is painful to realize that the kindness you admired was just a performance, that the support came from a strategic place, not a genuine one, that the person who is now distancing themselves was always distant inside, just pretending to be close while they still needed you. What now manifests itself with coldness has always existed. It was just hidden by a social mask, a mask that costs energy, effort, presence. And when the advantage is gained, that energy is exhausted. The need to pretend disappears, and the shadow emerges. This is the most revealing moment. When someone feels they no longer need to impress you, the mask falls. The messages stop. The invitations disappear. The affection cools. And you, who were once important, are now just a reminder of the time when that person still needed to pretend. This process doesn't just happen between colleagues or partners. It can happen with those you trust the most. The best friend who now uses sarcasm as a weapon. The partner who became emotionally absent as soon as they realized how much you depend on them. The leader who humiliates you in public to reaffirm their control. These are not personality changes. They are activations of what has always been underground in the psyche. The mask has fallen. The shadow has taken the wheel. The term persona, used by Jung, refers precisely to this device. A social construct that aims at acceptance, belonging, survival. But maintaining this facade requires effort. And when someone believes they have achieved security, influence, dominance, the need to sustain the persona dissolves. The shadow, previously repressed, takes the lead. No filters, no breaks, no excuses. You begin to notice the jokes that hurt more than they amuse, the absences that can no longer be justified, the looks that no longer seek you out, the competition disguised as advice, the control disguised as care, and in the end, disrespect being pushed as frankness, the distortion of facts, the reversal of blame, the manipulation that makes you doubt your own perception. And when you question it, the answer comes ready. You are too sensitive. This is the gaslighting phase. One of the favorite mechanisms of the shadow that has been discovered. The blame is placed on you. Criticism becomes envy. Discomfort becomes insecurity. Denunciation becomes drama. And you, without realizing it, begin to think that you are exaggerating, that maybe you really are seeing ghosts. But what you saw was real. It was the truth finally revealing itself. Without makeup. The biggest trap is trying to rescue the fallen mask, trying to remind that person of who they used to be. But the truth is, they never were. What you knew was the socially acceptable version, the shiny cover that hid the confused, wounded, unprocessed content. The mistake was yours, not for trusting, but for believing that kindness without depth is character. Don't try to revive the illusion. Don't try to sew the mask onto the face of someone who has already chosen abandonment as a form of power. When the shadow reveals itself, it's not time to save anyone, it's time to see, to accept, to move on. The collapse of someone else's mask is, in fact, the birth of your lucidity. It is easy to point out the deviations in others, to decipher their masks, to detect their contradictions. The hard part is to stop, to breathe, and to turn the mirror on yourself. Before trying to understand why the other manipulates, silences, projects, you must face the most uncomfortable question of all. Who am I when no one is looking? This is not a simple question. It tears you apart, because it reveals what you pretend does not exist. The tone that changes when you talk to someone who cannot benefit you. The patience that evaporates when there are no witnesses. Selective kindness, performed sympathy, criticism that comes out like poison when the person has no way to respond, the harshness that arises when you feel you are in control. Carl Jung said that you don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The shadow that dwells within you is not a monster. It is an accumulation of ignored parts, fragments of your history that were suffocated so that you could be accepted. The anger that never had a place, the envy that was demonized, the fear of appearing weak, the desire to control, pride disguised as self-sufficiency. All these elements have been pushed into a psychological basement where they ferment silently until they find a way to manifest themselves. These openings do not appear in big events. They arise in the details, in the way you talk to someone you consider inferior, in your indifference to the pain of others, in the joke that belittles someone else just so you can appear witty, in the secret pleasure you feel when keeping someone dependent on you. All of this is not just bad behavior. These are signs that your shadow is in charge, and you don't even realize it. The truth is that unconscious behavior governs much more than you realize. It interferes with your relationships, with your failures, with the words you keep silent, with the outbursts of anger that you swear were caused by the other person. But they weren't. They were stored away, waiting for the right moment to emerge. You may even say that it's just your way, that you have a strong personality, that you don't take abuse. But the reality is deeper. This way was shaped by wounds you never wanted to treat. And as long as they are ignored, they will continue to leak out in the form of sarcasm, intolerance, coldness, and control. Being aware of your shadow is not a sign of weakness. It is an act of strength. It takes courage to admit that you are not always kind, that sometimes you sabotage those you love, that you feel pleasure when you feel superior, that you envy those who dare to be free. This does not make you a despicable person. It makes you someone who is ready to grow. Do you really want to evolve? Then stop mapping out other people's flaws and start investigating your own reactions. Why does someone else's success bother you so much? Why do you need to be heard all the time? Why does your voice rise when someone contradicts you? These questions are secret passages to self-knowledge. They are invisible steps towards integration. We all carry a shadow, but those who truly shine are those who had the courage to face it, to touch it, to ask what it needs to finally stop screaming. Freedom is not born of denial. It is born of integration. It is not about getting rid of the shadow, but using it as a guide. When you recognize your patterns, there is no longer a need to project them onto others. When you accept your mistakes, you don't need to defend yourself with attacks. When you take responsibility for your reactions, the world ceases to be a threat, and the other ceases to be a distorted mirror. They become an ally, or a sign, but never again an enemy. Life does not send monsters, it sends mirrors. And almost always these mirrors come in the form of people who awaken what is most unresolved in you. Jung did not believe in coincidences. He spoke of synchronicity. Nothing and no one crosses your path by chance. Every encounter, every friction, every relational pain is a call, a map, a reminder of what still needs to be healed within you. When someone betrays you, it's not just about the betrayal itself. The most relevant question is not why they did it, but why you stayed. What prevented you from leaving before the pain set in? Why did you remain silent when your soul was screaming? The aggressor is real, but your permanence is revealing. It points to the original wound, the one you learned to normalize early on. A manipulative partner may be a reflection of the love you knew in childhood, conditional, intermittent, performance-based. A boss who devalues you may be a mirror of your own difficulty in valuing yourself. A friend who disappears when you need them most may just be playing the role you yourself have learned to tolerate. These are not villains. They are teachers. The lesson is not in the pain they cause. It is in the pattern you repeat. It is uncomfortable to accept this. It is easier to call it bad luck. Say you have bad luck, blame the universe. But the universe does not punish. It instructs. It repeats until you wake up. Until you say enough is enough. Until you see clearly what was once just unconscious repetition. The friend who only calls when they need you. A test. Will you set boundaries this time? The partner who alternates between affection and coldness. A mirror. Will you continue to confuse intensity with love? The colleague who takes credit for your efforts. A sign. Will you remain silent once again, or will you claim your voice? With each of these encounters, the universe is asking, have you learned? Do you understand what you deserve? Are you ready to break the cycle? But if you don't recognize the lesson, it will repeat itself. With new faces, same wounds. This is not guilt, it is responsibility. The difference is fundamental. Guilt paralyzes, responsibility liberates. It is not about saying that you caused the pain, but about understanding what it reveals about your own limits, your silences, your concessions. It is not about defending the other person, but about investigating yourself honestly. The mirror is cruel only when you refuse to look at it. But when you face it, you discover that the pain was actually an invitation, an access code to layers of yourself that were locked away. Self-respect begins when you understand that the other person can only invade the territory you left unfenced. Healing begins when you realize that it's not about changing the other person, but about transforming yourself. And then something changes. You start to make different choices, to take a stand, to close doors that you always left ajar, to recognize that love is not sacrifice, that presence is not an obligation, that a bond without reciprocity is emotional imprisonment. And the people who once seemed like mirrors become distant, not because they have changed, but because you have changed. Every difficult relationship is a spiritual invitation. Every relational pain is a summons. And when you understand that, you stop asking why it happened. and you start asking why it still affects you. That's when the cycle begins to unravel. Words can lie, looks can disguise, but behavior never lies. Have you ever heard people say they love you but disappear when you need them most? People who talk about peace, but explode at the slightest sign of disagreement, who preach respect but treat waiters as if they were invisible. Make no mistake, this is not distraction, it is revelation. The true self manifests itself in the details that escape the control of the ego. Carl Jung was suspicious of words. He studied patterns, because it is in patterns that the shadow moves. A speech about love that is not accompanied by care is just a mask. An apology without a change in attitude is just an act. The person who cries out for justice but lives in silent competition is hiding their own insecurity behind virtue. Kindness that depends on the environment is not kindness, it is calculation. The problem is that we live in a world addicted to image, where beautiful phrases are worth more than consistent actions, where those who speak well about emotional health are applauded, even if they ignore the limits of others, where spirituality is confused with aesthetics. But Jung warned, everything you deny in yourself, you will project onto others. And the more you pretend to be light, the denser the darkness that governs you inside becomes. It's not about perfection, it's about truth. The person who says they are at peace but cannot tolerate being contradicted is camouflaging an internal conflict. Those who talk about empathy but laugh at the pain of others have understood nothing about compassion. Those who preach about love but demand admiration are hungry for validation. And you? When you say you love yourself but accept crumbs, it is your shadow that is negotiating in place of your conscience. This is the moment to turn the mirror around again. You say you are kind, but how do you act when you are under pressure? You believe you have forgiven, but why do you still carry so much tension in your body when that person's name is mentioned? You talk about gratitude, but do you constantly compare your life to others? That doesn't make you weak, it makes you human, but ignoring it makes you blind. And a shadow that is not seen becomes poison. The shadow doesn't want to destroy you. It wants to be recognized. And recognizing is not justifying. It is taking responsibility. You are not an imposter for stumbling into old patterns. You just need to stop hiding behind good intentions. True evolution does not happen in speech. It happens when you observe your reactions in silence, when no one is applauding, when there is no benefit in looking good. Jung did not ask for holiness. He asked for courage. Courage to accept that your anger is also yours, that your envy says something about your needs, that your coldness is just a shield for the fear of not being loved, that your control is deep down a request for acceptance. You don't need to get rid of it. You need to integrate it, and integration is the path to freedom. From now on, instead of asking if others are consistent, ask yourself, am I living what I preach? Am I acting the way I want to be treated? Am I offering what I demand? Because only when this internal congruence is established will you stop projecting onto others what you have not yet wanted to face in yourself. If this really touched you, don't leave without leaving your support. It keeps this work alive. And if you really want to evolve, write in the comments, mindfulness, because that is the basis of all real transformation.